welcome to my channel. My name is Meredith, and today I want to talk about some Preptober content, specifically how I am planning on plotting my NaNoWriMo book for this November. As a disclaimer, I want to say plotting is still something I'm really getting used to, and I've taken a couple different methods and kind of mashed them together, and that's how I plotted my previous book that I'm still kind of working on. I want to revise my plotting method in order to plot the next one a lot faster because I'm only going to have a week to do it, not 4 months like I had for the last one. So today I wanted to walk you through the method that I have devised for myself. And I want to hopefully have a rough sketch of what this plot is going to look like before I sit down to write the book, because I am a pantser and so I can pants my way through something, but I don't really want to. I want to make sure that it's good, and I want to make sure that I have some type of structure in mind when I sit down to write. Before we really get started, I want to talk about a quote from Michelangelo, the Renaissance sculptor, who says, I'm going to read this because I'm going to get it wrong if I don't. Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. I like to think of writing this way because I think it works for both pantsers and plotters. So as a plotter, what is the plot going to be? It's in there, I just gotta carve it away until I find it. And that's what the pantser does, but on a larger scale of I'm going to write the story, and as I write the story, I'm gonna carve away and find it. And I am trying to find a happy medium where I am carving away so that I have some sense of what it's gonna look like when it gets to the finished product. The structure of this is going from basically macro level to micro level, and so it's building out big bones of the story and then going more specific. Is you gotta carve off some of the top layers of stone just to give like a vague shape of what you want, and then you go in with the details. So let's go through it. Number one, for me, it starts with character. Character drives story, it drives plot, character action, motivation, backstory. All of that stuff is determining what actually happens in your story, because plot doesn't just happen to your characters. Your characters make decisions that pull them through the plot. They change the plot, they act upon it. And so without your character having really strong goals, motivations, fears, and misbeliefs, things that they believe about the world that aren't actually true, without these things that push a flawed character through the story, we don't have much of a story. We just have somebody being reactive to a situation, and that's not as impactful of a story. The story that's really going to touch people and teach people a theme is going to be one where a character is active, but you can ask your character other questions. Those are the ones that I ask because I think those really get to the heart of what character is and what will drive your character through the story. Okay, so you need those things in order to create your basis for how your character is going to react to the event that happens to them, known as the catalyst. Next, I'm gonna pick a story genre. I haven't picked one for my book yet, which is kind of concerning because I thought that I had it more figured out than that, but I haven't. So a genre, or as Brandon Sanderson calls them, a plot archetype, is a type of story that your character will experience. So there's lots of different kinds. Romance plot archetype, where the goal is to get together with someone. Mystery, where you don't know something and the goal is to figure it out. And you can go to Save the Cat or Brandon Sanderson for a lot more examples of plot archetypes, story genre, all the same thing. But what this helps you figure out is your character's goal, basically. Generally speaking, right? Their goal is going to be really, really specific to those character questions that we asked, but it's going to be general to the story genre. So if their goal is to have a romance plot, then we understand that the basic goal is for them to get together with somebody. But their actual goal, specifically as a character, is maybe to get together with a specific person based on all of the things that they believe and fear or want or are motivated by, etc. So I'll pick a genre. And the main thing that genres help us with is, in my mind, the 3 Ps, which again comes from Brandon Sanderson. I really like his plotting advice, so that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. But Brandon Sanderson's 3 Ps are promise, progress, and payoff. So I want to figure out, for my genre that I pick, what are the 3 Ps of the genre based on what the character is going through. Okay, so in general, a romance promise is that 2 people are going to get together. The payoff is going to be them getting together, but the progress looks really different for every different story based on the character. The progress is actually the plot itself, is the twists, the turns, the ups, the downs. What happens in the middle? It's the biggest thing that you need to figure out, because the promise and the payoff, they're pretty simple and they're pretty much determined by the genre and by your character. So if you have those two things, you know the beginning, you know the end, you can work either from the beginning to the end or backwards, knowing the end, what needs to happen to get a person there. So that's the big benefit of story genre, is that it leads you right into the 3 Ps. And if you know the 2 on the end, then you can kind of wiggle your way through the middle. So we have 3 basic ideas of what's happening with this plot, but we need something more specific. So now we start a little bit more of the detail carving. What does that look like? That looks like very basic story structure that pretty much every writer should know and should follow in some form, right? So that looks like you've got a setup where your character is doing normal status quo things, and a catalyst happens that throws them into a new world. And they go throughout this new world fulfilling some part of the promise that you gave at the beginning. And so that's progress, is they make progress through the story, you hit a midpoint and something changes. And then you keep going and you keep making more progress, and then you hit the dark night of the soul, the all is lost, the real low point. And then the character learns the theme, emerges from it, goes on to get to the climax of the book, defeat the bad guy or win the goal or whatever they're doing. They need to accomplish the payoff that we have promised. And there's of course resolution. So those are the big beats. So I would ask myself, okay, what are these giant scaffolds that we need to put into place before we can put the smaller stuff in? I would list these out with bullet points and just put very simply, here's what my character will do to fulfill these big story beats. Next, I will be then plotting in a lot more detail save the cat beats. And so that's adding stuff in like, okay, what's their debate? What is their B story character? What's their fun and games? What is the bad guy's close-in portion look like? Is there a break into Act 3 and what does that look like? Or outlining the 5 different stages of the Act 3 climax. There's kind of micro beats within these really big scaffold beats. And I would want to list those out in bullet points and figure out what those are going to be based on, again, what I promised, based on the story genre, and what I want the payoff to be. Okay, so that's my basic plotting, right? We get down to the specific beats that I want to have. And this might be hard because, again, plot is just really tough for me. It does not come naturally. And usually it comes in scene snippets that I want to include, and that kind of informs how I want the progress to meander. Hopefully it's not meandering, but it informs how I want the progress to develop. So with that being said, we need scenes, something specific to get excited about. This will only come if I actually have time for it, because if I only get down to story beats, that might just be as good as it's gonna get. But hopefully I'll actually get to planning out some scenes. So what I would do is I would daydream and think of the scenes that I want to include. Now that I know a little bit more about the story, I would put those meaningful scenes that I thought of and get excited about into my plot structure of bullet points of what generally happens. Those will give me something to get excited about, something to jump to. If I get stuck, something that I'm thinking, okay, if I get through this part, then I can get to this next part, and I'm really excited about that. So it kind of gives me like that motivation to just keep going if I am having trouble, because, you know, 50K in 1 month is a lot, and we need to keep our motivation high. So then if I have more time, which I would love to have, but I just don't know if it's gonna happen, I would break down all of these beats of story and these scenes into chapters and try to pace out how many chapters I would want in the book. And knowing chapters is really important because each chapter is its own mini arc with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there needs to be change between the beginning and the end of the chapter, just as there needs to be some type of emotional or physical change between the beginning and the end of a scene. And so each unit of story, each plot point, each chapter, each scene needs to have its own little arc of change. And that's really the basis of story, is change, is transformation. So I would want to try to break it down into chapters where something meaningful changes in each chapter. And then if I'm really lucky, which I won't be because there's not gonna be enough time, I would want to break it fully down into each scene. But being a pantser, I don't always have to do that. And usually those scenes that I come up with that I daydream and are just really exciting to me, that's enough to just kind of have a couple scenes that are high points that I can look forward to. And sometimes if you actually create each scene for a pantser, that gets a little dry in the writing process. So sometimes you need to keep that spontaneity. And in my previous book, when I had written down like specific scenes that I wanted, I kept almost none of them. They all changed, but the basic plot points stayed exactly the same. It's pretty interesting when you think about your own style and what's gonna work best for you. If you need that structure and you say, okay, I wanna plot each scene that comes in each chapter, or if you just wanna have a basic idea of what happens in the chapter and go from there, it's really gonna vary by person. And for me, it's gonna vary by how much time I have. We'll see. So that is my plotting method that I'm going to use, and I'm going to show you in real time in a couple weeks when I finish the book I'm working on right now. I will then take that week and put this method into practice and plot, and I will show you that when that happens. I'm excited to do this now that I have had so much more practice of, first of all, plotting a book, and second of all, taking that plot and actually putting it into action and seeing what works and what doesn't, because there were definitely some things that didn't work and that I needed to change. And so this is gonna be hopefully easier the second time around, knowing how plotting works a little bit more and just how story structure works. To end with my Michelangelo theme, I want to say one more quote, which is basically the same thing, but in a different way. I saw an angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. I like that because as a pantser, or someone who doesn't always know what they're looking for, if I have an idea of what I'm looking for, that's how writing feels to me. I am carving until I set something free, and I don't know exactly what that is, but I will find it. I will figure it out, and if it doesn't look good the first time, I will revise until it looks like an angel. So with that, I will leave you to your Preptober. Let me know in the comments what kind of things you're doing, you're planning, or you are struggling with, because some of these things are real struggles, and each person has their own different thing that is just not going as smoothly. So I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Give this video a like if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe to see what else I'm doing. Obviously, I have a lot of plans for the future, and there is a lot of writing coming up. So if you're interested in that, stick around. You can find me on Instagram, which is linked in the description below. I wish you a productive and enjoyable Preptober and NaNoWriMo, and I will see you in the next writing video. Thanks for watching. Bye.